I woke up. I was lying on my back on a table. There was a light above me. And I figured they'd taken me to the hospital. But when I could finally focus my eyes, I could see that they weren't doctors, that they were these alien beings.
Welcome to the Curious Soul Podcast. I'm Cristina Malavenda.
And I'm Marty Go. We're two best friends exploring the deeper meaning of life
And the moments that connect us all.
Hi, Cristina.
Hi, Marty. How's it going?
So good. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I actually don't know if I know the answer to this. Have you actually seen a UFO before?
I have never, and I'm very upset about that. And literally last night, I was talking to the stars and being like, show me yourself. Like literally. So it's my new obsession. So
I just feel like you love UFO stories and alien abduction stories that I'm so surprised that you haven't seen anything. You were telling me about, like, was it UAPs the other day? Like there's another word now to call UFOs. What is it?
Yes. So this is my new obsession. I've gone through the deep end on spirituality, and now I'm discovering aliens are all a part of that because it's just consciousness in a different form. And UAPs mean unidentified aerial phenomenon. And it's, disclosure is coming soon. So I'm very, very, very excited for that.
And I think that it's important for us to talk about aliens or other life forms because I think it opens up our eyes to what's possible, what our reality actually is. And I think
exactly
because our show is about that, about the curiosity of what's possible, I think it's important to explore that.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you tell us what an alien abduction is?
Okay, so alien abductions are experiences in which people are taken or contacted by non-human beings, and often in ways that feel very vivid, physical, and profoundly real, and they may involve missing time, telepathic communication, encounters aboard a craft, unexplained marks or memories that return in fragments over time. And for many experiencers, these events are not imagined or metaphorical. They are lived experiences that can reshape how a person understands reality, consciousness, and their place in the universe. So exciting.
It's fascinating because it sounds like there's a lot of different types of experiences that hopefully over the course of the show or the series of this podcast that we'll be able to explore in more detail.
Oh my God, yes. So you've got to tell me, have you ever seen a UAP?
I actually have. So forget how long ago it was. It must have been maybe like 8 years ago. Sean and I had been experiencing a lot of things up in the sky, like a rocket launch we went to see a meteor shower in the Los Angeles forest, and we spent a couple hours just watching these meteors like flying through the sky and looking so amazing, and each one looked so different. And we had also been looking at the space station. We had the app that showed us when the space station was gonna fly over, and so we would track that a lot. So we were really familiar with what activity in the sky looked like. And one day we were driving from Northern California over the Grapevine, which is this mountainous part of the Five that connects the San Joaquin Valley to Los Angeles. I believe that's the correct way to describe it. And we were listening to a podcast, and we were both, he was driving, my husband was driving, and I was looking out the window. And we both saw something in the sky that was just moving in the sky, but we were both paying attention to it. And all of a sudden, it just took off in a completely different direction at like sonic speed. And then we both looked at each other. We're like, "Did you see that?"
Oh
and
my God.
we're like, "What was that?" It did not look like anything we'd ever seen before. And
was
Sean,
this during daylight or night?
This is nighttime. Very good question. Sean, like, even though we had seen all that stuff in the sky recently and we're familiar with it, that was really for me. Like, Sean is very familiar with activity in the sky. So for both of us to wonder what it was and know that it was something that was not normal was definitely, it was definitely something that was a UAP.
Oh
to
my
me.
God, I'm so jealous. That's amazing. Did you know there's like a meditation you can do to like contact them and have them appear?
You did say that. You're gonna have to try it, Marty. I think you're gonna
I
have to
know.
be the one to
I'm
try
a
it
bit
first.
scared, to be honest, but I really, really want to call in the good UAPs, the ones that have the best intentions for humanity. And I just want to see. I just want to see.
I know you do. I know you do. I think that there's gonna be a lot of exploration for us as we do this podcast. So a lot of exciting things to try for sure.
Can you tell us who we're talking to today?
So today we have the amazing opportunity to speak to Travis Walton. Travis Walton is one of the most widely known alien abduction experiencers in modern American history. In 1975, while working as a logger near Snowflake, Arizona, he became the central figure in a case that drew international attention after he disappeared for 5 days following a reported UFO encounter witnessed by members of his crew. His account later inspired the 1993 film Fire in the Sky, which very deeply affected me,
Me too.
based on his book, The Walton Experience. For nearly 50 years, Walton has continued to speak publicly about what he says happened while facing skepticism, scrutiny, and repeated attempts to debunk his story. Now, please welcome Travis Walton. We are just so grateful that you're here to share your story with us. And I know that you've told it many times. And so we're just so lucky that we also get that opportunity to hear it from you.
Boy, start at the beginning. Well, there were 7 of us working in the woods. They call us loggers, but anything you do in the woods with chainsaws is called logging. But we just finished a long day's work. We were headed home, and we saw a glow coming through the trees up just a little ways ahead. Couldn't see the source of it at first because the trees were so thick. But when we got where we were in direct line of where it was, there it was, a UFO hovering near the road. I yelled at the boss, Mike, stop the truck. He did. He said, what? The other guys were seeing it too. I jumped out and I went towards it. And they were, the rest of the guys were telling me, no, don't do that. Get back in the truck. Get away from there. And I was already thinking, yeah, this was a bad move. And as I approached it, the sound got louder, and it startled me, so I jumped down for cover, jumped into a crouch behind a log there. And I said, let's go. I didn't need to be told, but I was kind of torn between staying under cover behind the safety of the log. But so I jumped up to run back to the truck, and I just felt this numbing shock go through me, and I blacked out. The men in the truck, the other 6 guys, said that this blast of energy came out of the bottom of this craft, and it was brighter than lightning. It was just something that so powerful, and it picked me up and threw me through the air 15 or 20 feet. Some of the guys said that they were yelling, it killed him, get us out of here. And so Mike took off in the truck. And in the movie, they got up there a little ways, and Mike got a better grip on himself and said, look, we got to see if we can save him, see if he's still alive. And there was an argument, no, let's just go get help. But Mike said, no, we got to go. And so in the movie, the crew got out because Mike said, anybody who doesn't want to come with us can wait here. In the movie, they all waited there, and Mike went back alone.
Yeah.
It was a crazy story device. I have no reason for why Mike would go back alone. Maybe to emphasize the accusation that they had murdered me and it was a cover-up story or something. I don't know. But anyway, no, they all went back with Mike. And they found the spot where the truck had peeled out, leaving the spot. And the UFO was gone. They thought they'd seen it leaving from up there, a flash through the sky. But it was not there, and neither was I. And so they got out and made a search that night right there. I got to hand it to those guys. Now, they say that Mike broke down and cried, and that the youngest guy in the crew broke down and cried. And later on, the youngest guy got teased by his family about crying. And so he insisted that he never cried, and that I had to remove that from my book. Print a new edition where he didn't cry.
It's
I said,
okay to
"Look, Steve,
feel.
I wasn't there. I'm just going by what the other guys told me." It was extremely emotionally draining, and they left the woods there and they got in touch with the police. Another thing where the movie simplified things, where the police says, "Well, we'll have to go make a search in the morning." But no, the sheriff and his men went with them back to the site that night, made a preliminary search. The next morning, they launched a massive manhunt, some on horseback, you know. They gridded it. They had a systematic search where they, spread out. There was tracking dogs on the site, and they found a trail from where my footprints hit the ground outside the truck up to where my body had fallen, and the dogs couldn't find any trail beyond that. Steve was doing his best to try to make it be something that didn't involve aliens, you know. Well, maybe we really just saw this Forest Service fire tower, which would have taken 15 minutes to get there, you know. It was still a matter of they were under suspicion of murder. And so they volunteered to take sodium pentothal, truth detector, lie detector. They didn't know anything about that stuff, but there was a lot of suspicion. My mother and my brother were given state police lie detector tests.
Can you tell us your experience while they were looking for you and your experience of the abduction?
When I was returned, I was in terrible shape, and I didn't even describe to my brother what I'd been through. But Dr. Harder was psychotherapist, kind of in helping out with the UFO investigative group that were taking on my case. Dr. Harder had a very good technique that allowed me to recall what had happened without doing the standard thing of having me relive it. That would have been just way
Yeah.
too traumatic. He had
Yeah.
me
Absolutely.
go back there as an observer. So for the first time, I was able to relate to my brother and everybody there what had happened to me. I was missing for 5 days and 6 hours. But when I woke up, I didn't know when it was. Was it immediately after I got hit by that blast of energy? Or was it somewhere closer to the end before I was returned? I don't know, because I was only conscious for a short period of time. I woke up. I was lying on my back on a table. There was a light above me. I was in a lot of pain in my head and chest area. And I looked, and there was this device across my chest. And I figured they'd taken me to the hospital. But looking past the edge of this device on my chest, I could see these blurry forms there. But when I could finally focus my eyes, I could see that they weren't doctors, that they were these alien beings. Bald heads, huge eyes. And I just immediately, put two and two together. I freaked out. I'm on inside that thing. So I just, mustered what little strength I could manage at the time, rolled off of there, this device that was on me fell off, but I was mainly just grabbing for anything, any of their equipment that I could to fend them off. They started towards me, they extended their hands, but then I was screaming all kinds of stuff. They didn't reply. They didn't answer my
Mm.
demands for where am I, what is this? They just turned and left the room. I sort of got a grip on my courage and decided to get the heck out of there. I was just trying to escape from inside the craft, I guess.
Did they depict the inside of the craft very closely to what you experienced in the movie?
No, they changed a lot in the movie. There was one thing in the movie that they did do that probably was a story device that didn't happen, but it was able to show I couldn't catch my breath. I felt like I was suffocating, which added to the panic. And how do relate that? I guess you could have the actor saying, "Oh, I can't breathe. Give me oxygen," or something. But they had the actor have a membrane over his face, and he's struggling to scream, struggling to breathe through that. And that explains the additional panic when you can't breathe and when you can't make a scream.
You didn't have that same thing on your face?
No, that was movie. But
Yeah.
I still felt like I was suffocating, like I was badly injured, like I was dying. And so I made it. I got to get out of here, outside of this craft. Maybe I'd get some air. So I went out and
Yeah.
I went down this hallway. It curved, and there was a room that I could see. There was looked like a chair with some lights and buttons and controls and stuff. But when I moved towards it, the room darkened. I stepped back and it lightened again. So I figured out pretty quick that the lightning and darkening effect had to do with being near the center of the room where the chair was. But when I went over there and tried to operate these controls, hoping to open a door through which I could escape, none of those had much effect other than to move what I took to be a star pattern, points of light reflected on the walls and ceiling all around me. They would all shift in unison, which was very disorienting, trying to keep my balance. At that moment, a man came in, a human being, and he entered it through the door that I just come through, and it looked like a human being, except he had a glass ball on his head, but maybe that was because the air inside there wasn't sufficient for humans or whatever, but he wasn't responding to all my questions, but I thought maybe it's just because he had that helmet on. But when he took me out of that craft down this ramp, at that point, I don't know if it was there the whole time, but it was parked inside of this large enclosure. It's either a part of a larger craft or a building somewhere. I was just continued to try to get him to tell me what those creatures were, or what was happening to me, what was going on. There were some other disc-shaped craft in this big hangar-like thing, but they were more rounded than the one we came out of, slightly different shape. But he took me out of the big room, down a hallway, into a room where there were some other people. And they didn't have helmets on, so I just started over with all my screaming, yelling. I was hysterical and trying to get them to tell me what had happened to me. But I could hardly stand, as it took everything in me just to be led to walk that far. But they had me lay down on this table, and I started resisting because they wouldn't answer me. And there was no reason for them to not answer me without any helmets on. But one of them put a clear mask over my face. It was just kind of like an oxygen mask, except it didn't have any hoses hooked to it. And I went unconscious immediately. next thing I was aware of was waking up on the highway outside of the town nearest where this happened.
Before we keep going, if this conversation is resonating with you, please take a second to like, subscribe, or share it with someone who might need to hear it. It really helps us reach more curious souls, and honestly, this is exactly why we wanted to create this show.
Yes, and if someone came to mind while you were listening, send it to them. They might be meant to hear this too.
So why did they take, why did they take me at all, you know?
Right.
Because people call
Yeah.
it an abduction, but I'm not so sure about that anymore.
Why?
Because they could have gotten rid of the body, just dump me on an asteroid somewhere. Why would they keep me that long?
Why do you think?
I think they were repairing damage. The device on my chest was either some kind of something where they could determine what was wrong or repair what was wrong. Had a lot of strange devices I don't recognize, but the fact that they would take me to the town nearest where we had been, I don't think that, they could have taken me to where I live, but, Snowflake
Yeah.
here, this town is a big, wide valley. There's no place they could take me where I could get help and be within reach of, something where they wouldn't be in clear view by hundreds of people. The place where they dropped me off was outside of Heber, this little town, which is kind of the conjunction of a number of steep-walled canyon walls. So I could see the lights of the town down below, and probably nobody could see them.
So do you think you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or they targeted to abduct you?
I tried to avoid the idea that, they'd picked me out. I did something very foolish. I got close to something. I felt this kind of a strange charge in the air, and the discharge came from the craft. It could have been a side effect of just a charge that builds up in them. Also, I discovered research many years later that that part of the Mogollon Rim area, where we'd been working, where the logging contract was had the highest, second highest frequency of lightning strikes of any place in the
wow.
continental United States. The only one that would be
That's
higher would
interesting.
be Florida Everglades, which would be mostly water. So there could be something to do with lightning. Some other researchers told me about a crystal that is formed when lightning strikes the ground called fulgurite. I'd never heard of that, but when I was on the Joe Rogan show, his assistant immediately brought up pictures of a bunch of variety of strange crystals that were fulgurite. That maybe that was something that they couldn't easily make themselves or find elsewhere.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they were there. And I got too close, and maybe just the high frequency of lightning strikes may have charged the craft in a way where I got hit by a secondary discharge.
Why do you think that they let you go? Do you think that there was a reason for them letting you go?
Yeah, I think that, and I'm assuming, but I would guess that they had saved my life, prevented me from dying, and
Oh, wow.
it took 5 days to get done whatever needed to happen. And um,
So they were helping you.
yeah, I didn't feel that way at first. I viewed them as
Wow. Mhm.
monsters, hideous monsters captured me. It took a lot of years to get used to the idea to explain what they were doing and how it was they weren't attacking me. I was just a victim of my own foolishness in getting so close.
Wow.
I mean, how would you know, it's something that is so unexpected. Naturally you would be terrified, not
Terrified,
understanding,
yeah.
especially when they can't communicate with you.
there was a lot of after effects too. It's been 50 years plus, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was a lot of strain on all of the guys. Everybody has
Yeah.
remained firmly as to what happened, except briefly Mike, crew boss, after having fought so hard against the debunkers, kind of went off the deep end. He became so jealous of me, he refused to go out
Uh,
and do any interviews with me anymore. I mean, we'd be
uh,
there, and they'd just walk right past him to ask me questions, and he was a very proud kind of a guy, and he was the star of the
uh-huh.
movie, and he had been used to being the center of it back in that part of the. But then once we got out there, he just refused to go out on the road with me anymore. And he said, just he'd actually created the illustrations in my book. He said, "You can
Uh-huh.
have it. I don't care. I don't want nothing more to do it." And then he started trying to upstage me, trying to. He was so jealous. It was crazy, and it was
Mhm.
very
No, that's
embarrassing.
not healthy.
He wound up
Yeah.
He wound up denying that he said any of that stuff and sticking by it at the
Oh, wow.
end. I was by his bedside as he was lay dying here last month, and
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
I just reminded him about all our good times, all the things we did, and I never approached him about all that stuff he was saying, trying to um, get all the attention. I mean, he's making up stories that were just so ridiculous. It just how could somebody who
Uh,
was that precise in his thinking with the debunkers start making up these stories?
yeah.
He started saying
Yeah.
that he had um, gone to England and witnessed the crop circles being made by this strange glowing
Hmm.
craft. It was kind of a sphere inside of a glowing
Yeah.
triangle or something. And then he changed the story. He changed the story because he discovered there was a crop circle that was made in the shape of a snowflake, which is, the name of the town I'm in. Big in the news right now. Everybody wants to know why did Mike go crazy and say all this stuff. Well, he changed the story from witnessing this to that he made the crop circles. And then he did the same thing with the Phoenix lights. He said he claimed that he was on the highway and he was tracking it, and he followed it down into Mexico. But he changed the story to where he made the Phoenix lights on a ranch in southern Nevada. Lots of things where he felt like he had to compete with me. And then, he was getting
Yeah.
so much flack from the public that he pulled that all back and said, never mind, never said any of that stuff. He started denying he ever said it.
I saw the movie when I was a kid, and I had to walk out of the movie theater probably at the moment that you were talking about where he can't breathe and he has that on his face. And it's been some time since it happened and the actual abduction. And you've been telling your story for all these years. Like, what is it about your experience that you think is important for people to take away from it? Like, is there something that you learned that you would like to share with people?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. That's actually the most important epitaph or epilogue that there would be concerning this whole thing is how people what people should use in order to decide what's real and what isn't. You know, it's got to have nothing to do with what you want to be true. You have to start with the facts. Are your facts accurate and verifiable and complete? And logic. Is your reasoning solid, valid? Is it
Uh-huh.
valid reasoning? Those two things, whatever emotions you might enter into the question with are irrelevant. I mean, irrelevant to determining the outcome of did this happen or did this not happen, or is this true or is this not true? You can feel whatever you
Uh-huh.
want to feel, but it shouldn't enter into feelings and emotion must not enter into what determines what you believe to be true. And I think the world would be a much better place if somehow that became the main yardstick in public discourse.
So, have you been able to have any further contact after this whole incident?
Well, I hesitated to say anything that I couldn't verify with witnesses and all that sort of thing. But there was one pretty dramatic incident that I can tell you about because it was independently verified. I attended a speech by Jan Harzan. He was the newly chosen head of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network investigators.
Hmm.
And another speaker was Tracy Torme, who wrote the screenplay for Fire in the Sky. And they spoke. And when I was headed home, we saw this light. It definitely got our attention immediately. It's very bright off in the distance, but it was moving towards us so quickly that we could see almost immediately that it was three lights. A gigantic black triangle with a light on each of the points. And when it stopped right over the top of us. And it kind
Wow.
of did the thing
Wow.
where it kind of went like that, and then it rotated 90 degrees to its right, which would have made towards the west, and then it shot off in that direction. And there's
Wow.
nothing that I know of that humans possess that could move that quickly. It was huge. I mean, it could have been a quarter mile across, very low, right over the
Wow.
top of us. But my son was driving. I was in the passenger seat. My girlfriend was in the back, and we all saw it. But that wasn't enough. I wasn't going to say anything. But I found out that this website, UFOstalker.com, took in over a dozen reports, close to 15 almost immediately from people in that area.
Where was the area?
It was Burbank, north of L.A., where they spoke.
It was in
That's near
Burbank?
us.
And there was
That's
people
where
all
we are.
around.
Yeah.
People all around
What?
us. And yet this map showed that these people who didn't know each other were all reporting the same thing. Now, my
Yeah.
goal that I haven't followed up on is to get some of those people. Did any of you take a picture? Because
Yeah.
my son said,
Interesting.
Dad, should we pull over and take a picture? And I said, no, keep going. And I was, surprised at myself. Well, why?
Yeah.
Man, I wish I had
Yeah.
taken a picture. It was so huge. We could see the surface of it.
When was that, Travis?
I think it was like 93. I'm not sure. I wrote the
Oh,
date
okay.
down here
Okay.
somewhere.
So
But
it's been some time. Okay.
So what I find interesting is that, back then people did not believe, and I feel like you've been battling so many people trying to debunk your story. Times have changed, and now people are coming out in the military and NASA, and all this disclosure is happening right now. How do you feel about that? Do you feel justified in everything that in your story?
they've just been backed into a corner. They just have to acknowledge, because denying it was not diminishing the credibility of the people that were reporting to them. It was diminishing their
Yeah.
credibility. People weren't believing. So here a while back, NASA or the Air Force or some military, they decided to reveal some gun camera footage from an Air Force jet of an object that now they did this late on a Friday, late on a news cycle, so that by the time the Monday came around, it wouldn't create too big of a storm. But there it was, gun camera footage, film of this object moving and performing maneuvers that nothing we have can perform. And so they were
Right.
saying, look, we know that this exists, and it's not ours. And so it was their way of acknowledging that there's something there and sort of restoring their credibility a bit. However, it was kind of anticlimactic. Everybody goes, yeah, well, so what? So what else is new? I mean, they were unimpressed with that. So they actually repeated that same we're going to reveal the gun camera footage again. And it was late on a Friday again, and they showed it again. And still, and the next Monday, people were saying, yeah, well, we knew that. You're finally admitting what we knew you had. Now, I'll go on and say one thing about all these demands that the government open their files and tell us what they got. You know, we all got curiosity. We would just love to know. But so would the Soviets and so would the Chinese. We have enemies who have also possibly recovered data or even crashed vehicles. And wouldn't they love for us to throw open our files? Now, if we all said, oh, well, let's all do it at the same time, are they really going to empty their files? Could you trust that? Probably not. So I think the fact that we don't open our files and they don't open theirs probably is kind of a fail-safe sort of a thing for tension between the superpowers, because they don't know what we've got, but we don't know what they've got. Let's leave it that way.
Right.
I don't think throwing open the files is a legitimate demand. They'd be foolish to do that.
I personally feel like if everybody were to open up on that, I think that we could all evolve together and learn from this technology, maybe learn from the people from out there. I mean, the fact that you realize that they were trying to help you, I think that is like a huge
Incredible.
learning experience
But-
that we can all learn from each other and expand our technology together instead of holding each other back.
Maybe someday we'll be that mature as humans. But, you know, at any one time, there's over 100 wars going on. And that's how they see us. We have to admit how we look to them. Very warlike, constantly battling. What's the new war? There's always another one. Always. Never a time when there aren't a bunch of them going at the same time. So I'm alone. Not many people saying that it would be unwise to throw open the files, but I understand the desire. I mean, wouldn't it be great for them to validate what I'm saying happened?
Yeah.
That'd be good for me, but I can see why it would be unwise for them to do so.
I know that you all had, you know, a hard time in different ways. If you could say one more thing that's important to the people listening that you think that might be able to help them, what would that be?
Well, you know, that's a very good question, and it's something that's haunted me to a very high degree for many years, and I'm working on a book. Basically, how do we know what's true? How do we judge what's not true? And I'm not talking just about aerospace or military or politics. There's things like just health. What food, what nutrition, all the kinds of things where there's quite a bit of debate. And how do we know what's true? How do we compare notes and in a very peaceful way establish things that we can all come to agreement on? It's a huge challenge because so many people start with a conclusion and then look for ways to validate it and prove it.
Right.
You start with a question, then you gather information, then you decide after what you've gathered as much as you can. But they got it backwards. So many people begin with a conclusion. Can't do that.
We're so grateful that you've taken the time to tell us your story and
Yes.
tell us what your message is, because I think that goes beyond the reality aspect, that it's the things that we're not familiar with that right off the bat make people scared. I think that it's being open to what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
And when we hear stories like yours and we hear it with such detail, it's hard to dismiss it. It feels unmistakable to me. And when you start to hear the same stories over and over again, then it's to me that there's a pattern.
You've opened the minds and eyes of so many millions of people with your story, and we really, really appreciate your vulnerability in telling it, because what it does is expand our knowledge of who we are and where we belong in this universe. And so I really appreciate you telling your story.
Well, I would challenge the disbelievers to say, Okay, I'm open. Tell me what evidence you have that I should believe that this little blue planet here is the only source of life anywhere in the known universe. We can look out there and see that there are literally thousands of entire galaxies, and
Yep.
many of them
Yes.
far,
Yes.
far older than us. And to say
Yep.
Yeah.
intelligent life only developed here and nowhere else, and all the rest of that is just
Doesn't make
something to
sense.
sparkle in our night
No.
sky. No.
It's like the idea of the universe. It's like, it just blows my mind. I can't even like grasp the
And it's
idea of it.
constantly expanding. So how could we be the only
Yeah.
life forms out there? That sounds impossible.
Yeah. It's constantly expanding. You know, they've had to give up on the Big Bang theory that the universe was just the galaxy that we can see slowly moving apart from each other. But now with the much more powerful telescopes, they realize that there's much more far, far, far beyond that. They pointed it at the most empty spot in the sky, and they could see literally hundreds of galaxies, entire galaxies like
It's
our Milky
incredible.
Way. So it's so much bigger than anyone thought.
How could there not be life on other planets? It's the question is more now, like, what's the reason that they come? If they make contact, what's the purpose, and how are they doing it? Like, what kind of technology?
I think we would be interested in anything that looked like similar to us, but and it's a huge accomplishment to traverse that distance. A lot of the naysayers say no, they would never come here. It's way too far. They could never get here. But I think it's very foolish for scientists to say place limits on how fast they can move.
Yeah.
They're 400, 500 years ago, our most technological invention was fire. So, we're barely out of the cave, so to speak. These civilizations may have been in existence for thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of years. You're going to put limits on what they might be able to.
The idea of space and time just opens things up. We don't know how they make contact. We don't know where they're coming from, and there's endless possibilities.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's some of our best scientists place limits on what's possible, quote unquote.
Yeah.
You don't know what's
Yeah.
possible.
Right.
We don't, until we know everything, that we can't say.
My hope is that your stories and people's stories who've experienced things like that, we become open to it and not afraid of it, so that we can move forward and study these things, so that we can expand and evolve and learn from each other. So I just think from my experience, I feel like we are moving towards that. And I have a very positive outlook that we're going to be learning more and more of what your experience and others, and be able to move forward technologically.
And you know what? People say, well, why don't they just land on the White House lawn and here's a bundle of technology that'll put you 1,000,000 years in the future? No, they're not going to do that. That would be very destructive. We know that anytime more advanced societies have reached the less primitive, the less developed here on our planet has been quite destructive for the lesser developed.
Violence. We can't even see our brother humans as the same. We're destroying each other. So how would they feel if someone from a completely different planet
I think
came
they
to
have
Earth?
the
So, yeah.
technology to do everything they're doing here, see what they want to see, and remain completely undetected. I think the sightings that we have are on the edge of provability, short of creating a panic, in order to constantly remind us that we're not alone, just nudging us in that direction. And people are so stubborn, but if they would just keep looking at that instead of the hundreds of wars that are going on.
Travis, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. This is amazing.
Well, thank you.
Please like and share.
And you can subscribe at thecurioussoulpodcast.com for all things curious.